Good morning to everyone who's able to view this video, and to all those who are with us during this lesson. I'm going to present a geography lesson to you for the grade 12s, and I am hoping that you are going to enjoy the lesson. And that's what is going to happen during the lesson. If you have got questions, I will see them. Please comment with your questions so that I'll be able to jot them down. Thereafter, I will respond accordingly. Now, I just want to give you a brief of our question paper. Now, the structure of our question paper is as follows. In fact, we've got two question papers. The first question paper, which is our paper 1, has got 225 that you are supposed to get. And the second one, which is our practical paper, our paper 2, has got 75 marks that you are supposed to get. Meaning both of our question papers, they make 300 marks. Now, our question paper, especially paper 1, the one that I'm going to deal with, has got 2 sections. And the 2 sections have got 4 questions. Now, this is what I mean. We've got section A that deals with climate, weather, and geomorphology. Then under section A, we've got 2 questions, your question 1 and your question 2. So in most instances, your question 1 will cover most of climatology, and your question 2 will cover most of your geomorphology. And again, we've got section B that has 2 questions as well. Section B that has got 2 questions as well. Question 3 is settlement, and question 4, it is the economic geography of South Africa. So your paper 1 that has 4 questions, you are only supposed to answer 3 of the questions to make 225. You answer only 3 questions, and all the learners that I've been teaching, I've been advising them to respond to question 1, question 3, and question 4, as they are the simplest questions that you can answer and possibly get a lot of marks. So please consider that, responding to question 1, to question 3, and to question 4. Now, the question that I'm going to be dealing with here, it is question 3, the question that is speaking about settlements. Now, this is the easiest question that most learners are responding to, and easiest question as well that most of our candidates get a lot of marks. Now, this question paper, this question 3, deals with settlements. And what we know about settlements, or what you are supposed to know in fact about settlements, is that a settlement rather, it is a place where people live together. So that is the basic understanding or the basic knowledge that each and every candidate should have about settlements. Settlement, it is a place where people live together. Now, settlements are accompanied with 2 terms that you are supposed to understand very well. The first term, it is site, and the second term, it is situation. So with site, we are saying site, it is the actual place where the settlement is. Where the settlement is known as site. And now, this site does not exist alone. This site exists with what we call a situation. And a situation, it is simply defined as the relationship between the settlement and the surroundings. Meaning, what is it that surrounds the settlement? What is it that is next to the settlement? What is it that we can find around an area where people live together. What is it that we can find? What is it that we see? Police station, we see schools, we see hospitals. So all of those things are known as situation. It is what surrounds settlements. Now, we've got reasons that makes people to choose where to live together. Remember, when people live together, that is known as settlement, and where the settlement is known as site. So we've got reasons that influences people to choose site, reasons that influences people to choose a type of a place where the settlement will be. And number one, we are told that one of the things that influences the site choice is wood. Sorry, it's fuel. Fuel meaning the ability for people to create energy so that they can do domestic things, like whether we have availability of wood around, whether we have availability of coal around. So fuel availability influences a site. Where we've got wood, we'll find a lot of people staying there because they know that they can easily chop trees and find wood. And again, we've got what causes people to choose the site, the aspect from the understanding that you got from grade 10, it is the direction in which the slope is facing. So people prefer to stay in slopes that are very sunny. Some people prefer to stay in slopes that are very windy. So aspect as well influences the choice of a settlement. And again, we've got fertility. Haribaka fertility, we are speaking about, for instance, soil where we choose to live have fertile soil. Will we be able to grow crops? We will be able to our cattle will be able to graze in that particular place. So fuel availability influences site, aspect influences site, fertility especially of soil influences site. The other thing that influences site, it is the access to transport. We know that no one wants to live in a place where you will struggle with moving from one place to the other. So if you live in a place, that has got roads, taxis can pass by. If you live in a place that has got a railway, you can use a train. So the availability of transport network also influences the choice of a site. And again, we are told about communication network as an influencer. No one wants to stay in a place where they will struggle with a network. No one wants to stay in a place whereby they cannot be on social media, they cannot contact their families. So communication network also plays a role in a site choice. And again, distance from the market. Now, people do not want to stay in places whereby they are far from shopping centers. People will not be able to go to access the shopping center easily. So people do not want to stay in such places. So fuel availability, aspect, fertility, especially of soil, access to transport, communication network, distance from the market, and topography as well, whether the place is flat, whether the place is steep. So all of those things will get to influence the ability of a site. Remember, some people prefer to stay in hilly and mountainous areas, whereas some people prefer to stay in flat land. So those reasons that I've given you will be able to, and in fact will enable people to choose a certain site for themselves. So in your question paper, you are not going to be asked to list the factors that affect site, of factors that influence the reason for choosing a site, but you'll be given a question that will want to see how deep do you understand these reasons. For instance, you can be given a diagram like it has been happening for the past years. You can be given a diagram in which you are supposed to identify those reasons on the diagram, or you can be given the reasons, maybe 4 reasons, and be asked to write the paragraph in how the reasons relate, or you can be asked maybe to look around a certain settlement in a form of a diagram also, a certain settlement in a form of a diagram also, that will enable you to give the reasons without them being there. Now, we spoke for a very long time about a site, and remember, I'm giving you important information that will help you in order for you to respond to question 3 and in order for you to get a lot of marks. So we've looked into a site. So now let us look into the situation. What is it that we mean by the situation? Remember, I said to you, basic understanding of situation will be the relationship between a settlement and its surroundings. Where is the settlement? What is it that is next to the settlement? And that is the situation. So I hope that is understandable. Where is the settlement? What is it that is next to the settlement? What is it that surrounds the settlement? So without people staying there, without us having people staying there in the settlement, what is it again that we have? So that is the situation. So let us look at the type of settlements that we have. Now, in this topic, you'll be told that we've got only 2 types of settlements. Number 1, it's the rural settlement. Number 2, it is the urban settlement. Now, what makes us to be able to say this is rural and this is urban? Now, the reason why we are able to distinguish between the two, it is the function. And what is it that we mean by the function? By the function, we mean the purpose that settlement is serving. That is what we mean by the function. The purpose that the settlement is serving. So we've got 2 types of settlement, rural and urban settlement. So the examiners, they won't ask you list 2 types of settlements that we have. No, they are not going to do that. But they are going to ask you to distinguish the functions of the rural settlement and urban settlement as well. So you must be in a position to understand what purpose is it that the settlements are serving. So the first thing that you need to understand about rural settlements is that rural settlements are unifunctional. That is the first distinction that you must know, and that you must understand. Rural settlements are unifunctional. What is it that we mean by saying rural settlements are unifunctional? Rural settlements are unifunctional because they have only one purpose. They have only one function. They have only one work. They have only one activity. So that is what is meant by saying rural settlements are unifunctional. So that is the word that you should know, and you should associate the word with rural settlements. Rural settlements are unifunctional. Now, what is it that we mean by unifunctional? Remember, let us relate the unifunctionality of the rural settlements to the function. It has got only one function, or it has got only one work, or it has got only one purpose. And what is that one activity or one work that the rural settlements have? What we know about rural settlements is that they are unifunctional, meaning they've got only one purpose. Now, the purpose or the activity or the work of rural settlements, number 1, it is that of primary activities. What is it that we mean by primary activities? We mean that rural settlement, they only deal with the extraction of raw materials from the ground. That is what rural settlements deal with. Already in your mind, that is what you know. That is what you know about Gomakaing. So The primary activities, they are associated with the extraction of raw material from the ground. So meaning the activities of mining. You know that when you are from rural Rustenburg, we've got platinum. We've got a lot of mines there in rural Rustenburg. Activities of fishing. You know that in the Western Cape, we've got a lot of fishing activities. Forestry, the chopping down of trees, and hunting as well. So those are the primary activities that will be found in rural areas. That is why we are saying rural areas are unifunctional, meaning there are no other activities besides primary activities. And remember, primary activities: farming, fishing, forestry, mining, and hunting. So the question paper or the examiners, they are not going to ask you to list different types of primary activities, but they will ask you questions that will need you to think critically, and that will enable you to use the understanding that you have in order to respond to the questions. They are not going to say, no, they are not going to ask you those things, but they will want to get your deep understanding of the unifunctionality of rural settlements. And again, with urban settlements, now it is the opposite of rural settlements. Urban settlements are multifunctional. Multifunctional. Ya no ba ga etsa sa tse tiro ga go tsia. Ga o ka ke wa bua se khwaza mo multifunctional. O se bua kae? O se bua kae se khwaza mo multifunctional. So, if you are going to pass this exam and you are going to pass your grade 12, then that is when you are going to start body multifunctional. Mariano ga o sa tse tiro ga go matsapa o di bua le bo multifunctional. So now, urban settlements are multifunctional. And what is it that we mean by saying urban settlements are multifunctional? This is what we mean. In urban settlements, you know, as urban settlements, we are speaking about towns, cities. Those are types of urban settlements. Urban settlements are multifunctional, meaning they've got a lot of functions, they've got a lot of activities, they've got a lot of purposes as well. That is what we mean by saying urban settlements are multifunctional. And which activities are we referring to? How many activities do we have there for us to say urban settlements are multifunctional? How many activities do we have there? So number one, we are dealing with secondary activities. We are dealing with tertiary activities. And lastly, we are dealing with quaternary services. So now we can see there's a distinction between the function of rural settlements and the function of urban settlements. With rural settlements, we only have primary activities. But with urban settlements, we've got secondary activities, we've got tertiary activities, and we've got quaternary services. What is it that we mean by secondary activities? Secondary activities are those that deal with manufacturing and processing the raw materials that we got from primary activities. Again, right, gauta ga itse we ntse lo go mining o bo e rwala mo monwaneng or o bo e rwala mo molaleng. It needs to be processed first so that it can suit human purposes. So those are the activities that are involved in the secondary activity. The activities of changing the raw materials in order for them to suit human purposes. And we've got tertiary activities as well. Those are dealing with the rendering of services and the selling of goods. And we've got your quaternary quaternary re bua ka research, re bua ka your libraries, re bua ka your universities, re bua ka your information technologies. So I'm hoping that now you are in a position to distinguish between rural and urban settlements. Now, settlements are classified according to 3 things. This is what you should know. Settlements are classified according to 3 things. Thing number 1, size. You want a size is important everywhere. Size is always important. Everywhere the size is important. So classification number 1 in terms of size. Classification number 2 in terms of complexity. In terms of complexity. Classification number 3, they are also classified according to pattern. So settlements are classified according to number 1, size. According to number 2, complexity. And according to number 3, pattern. Now, usually, the size of a settlement should correspond with the population. But remember, when we highlighted the reasons for size there, we've got a lot of things that makes people to choose where to live. And sometimes you'll find that a lot of people choose the same thing. For instance, reality should, according to geography, because Gauteng it is small, Gauteng should have a few people. But because of reasons that makes people to come to Gauteng, Gauteng has got the highest population. So that is what should be happening, but reality always dictates otherwise. So we no longer have small settlements with small populations, but because of certain things that makes people to go to certain settlements, then we end up having small settlements with large populations, like Gauteng, for instance. Now, what is the size of settlements? Now, the first size number 1. Now, this diagram, this part of your topic, when they ask about it, when the examiners ask about it, they usually give you a hierarchy table where you'll have the first size at the top and the largest size at the bottom. So I've seen for the past years in a triangle, then the smallest size at the top, then the largest size at the bottom. I think I had something like that here. Well, unfortunately it's not here, but if you can look past question papers, that is what you will find. Now, the smallest size ever of a settlement is known as isolated farmstead. Now, Haribwaka isolated farmstead, what is it that we mean? Now, people from rural areas, especially those that are living in the rural Eastern Cape, will understand this very better. Haribuaka isolated farmstead, ribuaka smaller houses where a group of families live together. For instance, you can say dirantabole tse pedi tsena ke tsa ramogolo, dirantabole tse pedi tsele ke tsa rangwane, dirantabole tse pedi tsele ke tsa ramogolo le bana ba gagwe, and so on. So those are known as isolated farmsteads. So that is the smallest size of a settlement that you can ever find according to geography. So as an isolated farmstead, smaller houses where a group of families stay together. Then after that, we've got a hamlet. What is it that we mean by a hamlet? A hamlet, it is a collective of small isolated farmsteads. So if we've got a lot of isolated farmsteads, remember, let me give a typical example of what is usually happening in Tswana rural villages. You'll have isolated farmsteads, then raitsi gore fana ke fa ke kgotla ya Botau, then fale ke fa Bonkwe, then fale ke fa Modise. So all those farmsteads, when they are together, they make what we call a hamlet. Now, hamlets, they do not have a lot of function. You'll find that hamlets, they've got only one church or two churches, but they do not have higher functions like schools, like shops or general dealers. So they'll only be having schools. Then after the hamlet, we've got a village now. A village, it is a collective of hamlets. So after the isolated farmsteads, we are going to have hamlets, and after hamlets, we are going to have villages. Then after villages, we all know what are villages. A village is where we have a large farming community. A large farming community, so that is a village. A village usually has schools, it has churches, it has general dealers' name. So that is what we know as a village. Then after a village, we have what we call a town. Now, a town now, it is not in the rural areas. So according to this size, we only have three places in the rural areas. We have number one, an isolated farmstead, we have a hamlet and a village, and it ends there. Then from town going upwards, we have places that exist in urban areas. For instance, let us start from a town. What is it that we mean by a town? A town, it is a small urban area that provides secondary activities. For instance, where I stay, the nearest town is Krugersdorp. So now a town has got a lot of secondary activities that are being provided to the community. For instance, we'll have hospitals in towns, we'll have your factories, your wholesalers, and those are the things that you are going to find in towns. For instance, we know that in Krugersdorp town, we've got Paardekraal Hospital, we've got Krugersdorp Hospital, and we've got factories, your Bull Brand there. So those are the activities that you will find in towns. So after the village, we've got towns. Then after towns, we've got cities. Cities now are places that provide specialized services. For instance, your universities, your airports, those are known, those activities, you'll only find them in towns, in cities. And remember, where you stay, do you know the city that is near you? Because I know I stay in Johannesburg, and you know in Johannesburg, that is where you'll find universities. You'll find your University of Johannesburg, which other university? Oh, the University of Wits. You'll find the University of Wits there. How can I forget Wits? You'll find the university, you'll find OR Tambo there. You'll find colleges like your Rosebank colleges, and those are specialized services that provide for a large group of people, and those people are also willing to travel in order for them to get the specialized services. For instance, people can travel from as far as a different country to get to a university. People can travel from as far as a different continent to get to a university. Then after that, we've got a metropolis. Now, a metropolis, it is a city that has got a neighboring towns. That is what a metropolis is. Then after a metropolis, we've got a conurbation. Then a conurbation, the simplest example that I always relate about Metropolis and conurbation is that let us use our municipalities, our larger municipalities, for instance. We know that in Gauteng we've got Ekurhuleni, we've got Tshwane, we've got Westrand. So they can be used as examples of a conurbation. And now we've got a megalopolis that is the largest now. A megalopolis, a simple understanding that you can get from a megalopolis. It is, for instance, a province, because that is a sprawling urban city that is consisting of towns, that is consisting of conurbations, and so on and so on. And then lastly, we are going to look at the complexity. And what is it that we mean by the complexity? Complexity, we mean the elements that are found in a settlement. What is it that we find in a settlement? What is it that we find in a settlement? What is it that we find in a rural village? What is it that we find in a rural village? You know, for instance, in rural villages, you'll find churches, you'll find schools, you'll find general dealers. So we want to know how many elements, how many components do we have in that particular village, and that is known as the complexity. How many universities do we have in Gauteng? That is the complexity. All components that we have in a settlement, they are known as complexities. And the other one, remember we are still dealing with the classification of settlements. Now, the other one that you are supposed to know, it is that of pattern. And this aspect, it is very, very important. It is always there, and it has been there in your past question papers. And please, when you study, use past question papers, because I want you to get to the style in which questions are being asked, get to the tone, and get to the understanding in which questions are asked, because subjects, they do not change, but the style of question changes. So when you use past question papers when studying, you'll understand the tone in which examiners ask. You'll understand the style in which they use to ask. So this aspect of patterns, it is very, 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 very important. It is always there in your question paper. Not to say other aspects are not important, but this one of patterns, it is always there in your question paper. Now, when we are referring to a pattern, we are referring to the physical shape of a settlement. And how is the physical shape of the settlement and its position to the surrounding settlements. I hope you understand what I'm saying. With pattern, we are referring to the physical shape. How does this settlement look like? And how is its position to its surrounding settlements? Now, a settlement is classified according to two patterns. Number one, dispersed pattern. Number two, nucleated pattern. What is it that we mean by dispersed? Now, with dispersed, we are saying individual settlements are far, or individual buildings are far from each other. So you know that is the case in rural areas. You'll find one house here and the other house there. So when we see that, we are saying the pattern is dispersed. If you don't know, if the word dispersed is too much English for you, you can say it is isolated. One building is far from each other. So that is the pattern number one, dispersed or isolated. And we know that the simplest meaning that you can get out of these two words that means the same thing is to say buildings are far from each other. And I want you to know all these terms that I am giving you, because sometimes the examiners will not decide to say dispersed, but they will decide to say isolated. And hey, so get used to the two words. If it is not dispersed, it is isolated. And the other one, it is nucleated. So we know that the nucleated pattern is very common in urban areas where buildings are close to each other. So if you don't want to say nucleated, you can say clustered. You see, they are close to each other. They are close, not closed to each other. I wonder if you are, for instance, if you are being asked to explain what is a nucleated pattern, then you say a nucleated pattern is when buildings are closed to each other. Get it wrong there. You have another understanding. They are close to each other. It's closed. Close to each other. So we've got two types of patterns that you need to understand. Number one, dispersed. If you don't want to say dispersed, you say isolated. Number two, you say nucleated or clustered. So I know that sometimes this is too deep English. The English is just too big and heavy on you. So stick to clustered or stick to isolated. Understood? Thank you. So now, like I've highlighted before, that in urban areas, the clustering of buildings, and in a rural area, the isolation of buildings are very common. So they might give you, I know it was in one of the question papers, I just don't remember if it was 2016 or 17, in one of the question papers where they gave you two figures. You've got in one figure you had a lot of buildings that were close to each other. Then in the other figure you were told you were given buildings that are far from each other, and then you were asked to mention which pattern is which. So you must understand, and you must keep that in your mind and in your heart. You see, now is not the time to keep your boyfriends and your girlfriends in your heart. It is the time to keep your school knowledge to your heart. So you must know that every time you see buildings that are isolated, there are high chances that it is a rural settlement. And when you see buildings that are close, not closed, but close to each other, there are high chances that is a nucleated pattern. For instance, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see here. If you'll be able to see here, you can see that buildings are isolated there, buildings are isolated here, and buildings are isolated here. So that will tell us that is a urban settlement. So I hope that we are going to meet some other time, and when we meet some other time, we are going to deal with the rural settlements. Specifically, we are going to deal with the patterns that are in rural settlements. We are going to deal with the functions of rural settlements. We are also going to deal with the shapes of rural settlements, and we are going to deal with the land use in rural settlements. My advice to you is that please, when you answer your question paper, remember the minister said all grade 12s are going to write fully fleshed question papers. So when you answer your question paper, please consider answering question 1, consider answering question 2, and consider answering question 1, question 3, and question 4. Please leave out question 2. It is complicated and it is always poorly responded to. So please, if you can just help yourself, my experience has proved me correct. Please help yourself by answering question 1, question 3, and question 4. I hope we are going to meet again so that I can be in a position to explain this further. And for those who are doing mathematics and the science, please tune into the page again, as you are going to be presented with lessons around those subjects. And until we meet again, it's a bye for now. Thank you. And one other thing before I leave, please, if you've got any questions, you can contact me. You can send me a message, you can send me an inbox, you can send me whatever, so that I can be able to help you and outline all the questions that you have. Thank you.